Hello and welcome to Under the Lights, the boxing talk show brought to you by Sportology TV, with myself, Ali Drew, and my co-host, Ouney. On the last episode of Under the Lights, I was joined by Chris Billam-Smith, who was due to be fighting for the British Cruiserweight title on November 21st. That date has now changed. It's changed to January 30th due to his opponent, Dion Juma, having eye surgery. So fingers crossed that actually will go ahead in the new year. But on today's show,
guys, today's show, we bring you another special guest. If you were born in the 80s and you were around in the 90s, you know who this guy is. You've got to be a little bit old. But yeah, former European champion, does his bit for Sky Sports. He's an analyst. He's got one of the best boxing podcasts online. Just check it out. It's called Pound for Pound. It's with Jake Wood, a.k.a. Max Branning. None other than the very busy Spencer Oliver. Spencer, how you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. 80s is a bit strong, to be fair. 90s, I'll take 90s, but 80s, I think I was quite young then as well.
No, but you've got to be born in the 80s to know what's happening in the 90s. That's how I knew about you. I was born in the 80s, man.
I was born in the 80s as well, actually.
Yeah. So how's
I was born in the 70s.
Yeah.
76.
We can't tell.
75.
We can't tell, to be honest, Spence.
No, you never know.
You're looking 21, mate. You're looking 21.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Brilliant.
So how's things anyway, guys? Everything good?
All good. How's life treating you in these crazy times that we're living in?
Crazy times we're living in, and it's affected boxing. It's affected boxing in a big way, to be fair. I feel sorry for the small hall promoters, guys that rely on shows to get 80% capacity to be able to give everybody the work. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the grassroots of the sport is being really affected. I think that Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, Bob Arum, I think they're all doing great, bringing boxing back and getting it, back on the screens. And the loopholes they've had to overcome to do that has been incredible. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the Matchroom Fight Camp and various fights, behind closed doors. And, it's been a tough job. It's really tough for the sport. But like I said, the small hall promoters, the likes of Steve Goodwin, Mo Priors, those type of guys, Cole Greaves, they're really struggling because they can't give these kids the work. And when people can't get the work, I think we could possibly lose a generation of boxers. The young kids that are coming through that rely on making their name on these small hall shows, then they get the break at the bigger level. It's going to be very tough for them right now because the work's not out there and we don't know when this pandemic's going to end.
Yeah.
How do you think that the sort of behind closed doors shows have done? Obviously, you mentioned Fight Camp there. It was successful and very different. How did you find it? Obviously, you were involved.
I've got to be honest. I found it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever been involved in boxing. Now, I've done shows all over the world and worked on the biggest shows and everything else. But that, for me, was one of the most satisfying. I think what Eddie Hearn done in Fight Camp, when he done it at the Matchroom headquarters, I think what he achieved was that he created an atmosphere without a crowd. It was like magical. And I don't know if that's because we'd all been through this really, can we swear here or not swear?
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, this really bad time. We've been through this really bad time, and I think it was just really satisfying to get those shows back on the road. And I think he'd done a great job, and it made the fights 50-50. And everybody that got the opportunity to box on them shows realised that actually this is a great opportunity for me. And I think, Ali, as well, what we've seen is that it favours some fighters and not others. Some fighters feed off the crowd. Some fighters need the crowd to get themselves up for it. But I think it's favoured the underdogs slightly because these guys, the kids that have been coming in and being brought in, have seen it as a massive opportunity and they've been raising their game. So, yeah, it's fascinating times. I think that they've been successful. I think that, like I say, Frank Warren's done a great job as well. Bob Arum's doing great over in America. I think they had crowds, actually, didn't they, for his last one?
Yeah, a few more.
Who was that?
The Lopez Lomachenko fighter.
Yeah, Lopez. Yeah, they had like 11,000, 9,000 in there or something. So slowly getting it back. I'm not sure when we're going to get crowds back over this side. I think we were hoping to get crowds in for Anthony Joshua versus Pulev, but that looks unlikely now when the new restrictions have been put in place. So that fight will still go ahead, obviously, behind closed doors. But yeah, I think that Eddie was hoping towards the back end of the year he was going to be getting crowds in. But who knows now? It's like such uncertain times. It's so difficult for everyone.
Spence, actually going off that, I was talking to Josh Taylor a couple of weeks ago, just after his fight, And he said that was the most weirdest thing. Like, he got announced as the champion, come out, and he heard a couple of claps, and that was it. And he goes, I just stood in your call, and I looked around, and it was like, well, what is this about? But yeah, I think that's life for the next couple of months at least. Before we talk about sort of the weekend's boxing that's gone, I just realized there's a man in this picture up here of Canelo Alvarez. He's the one that's taken the headlines this week. Finally been released, you know, sort of settled his lawsuit with DAZN and Golden Boy. He's a free agent now. And he's talking about fighting some of the big boys in the division. What do you make of this whole saga that's gone on for the last couple of months?
It's a difficult one, actually, because I think he signed an 11-fight deal with DAZN. Yep. He had his first two, I think, was Rocky Fielding, and I forget who the second fight was against.
I think.
Anyway, so he done the 2 fights. So meant to be doing 2 fights.
Yeah.
Sorry, again?
It was Kovalev, the Kovalev fight.
Yeah, that's it, Kovalev, yeah. So, and then he boxed Daniel Jacobs after that. So he'd done the 3 fights for the first year, which was in the contract. And then he was going to be doing 2 fights a year for over a 5-year period for this set amount of money, ridiculous amount of money. Anyway, those fights didn't happen due to the pandemic and due to things happening. And I think that what they were talking about was, this is what I'm hearing, is that the dispute was that Canelo was offering them opponents. DAZN were taking a couple of months to come back. And then when they were coming back, they were saying they weren't credible opponents because they wanted bigger names. So it was just it was a very messy, very awkward situation. I'm glad they've got it all resolved now. And Canelo's now a free agent. Who does he sign with? Who does he go with? I think he can do it on his own, if I'm honest. He's that big. I think it's something that could happen. You know, does he need a promoter? Does he? You know, this guy's sort of gone beyond that, like Floyd Mayweather did.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Perhaps he's just going to do it himself now. I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm glad that he's a free agent, and I want to see him back in the ring.
I think Canelo said in a statement that he is looking just to do his own promotion and sort of promote with other promoters out there, which is the same thing that Floyd's done in the past. But let's talk about potential fights. There's certain fights that are now touted because it's opened up the doors, all the doors for him to fight, especially other champions. Caleb Plant is one of them. Charlo's getting mentioned. Which fight would you like him to fight next, or what do you think is realistic for him next?
I think like a Charlo or something like that is realistic. Listen, Billy Joe Saunders has been talked about for a long time now, since before the beginning of pandemic. The fight was made, then it was off due to what had happened. Then it was on again, then it was off again. Something like that would be, they're the sort of names now that I think we need to see him in with, Canelo. I think that Billy Joe Saunders or someone like that, that's a fight that I would like to see. Callum Smith even, I'd love to see that fight. Callum Smith, you know, wants to fight. So I think these guys have offered the fight to the Team Canelo. Canelo's chose to pick other opponents for whatever reason, and then fights didn't materialise anyway. But I think that, I think that they're the fights that he needs now. He's at that sort of level that he's got to box you Billy Joe Saunders, he's got to box your Callum Smiths, the other champions at that weight, you know.
He has got to a stage in his career that he has to start. He has fought his resume. When you look how like he's fought already, I don't think there's anyone in the world that's fought champions like he has. But he needs to carry that on because he's number one. When people talk about boxing, Canelo's number one fighter in the world, so he needs to carry that on. And that was really going to happen at that point. Let's talk about. I think Ali wants to ask you about Deontay Wilder.
Deontay Wilder. The Wilder statement that has come out. Obviously, it's been a bit delayed due to it was a few weeks ago that we heard, you know, the third trilogy fight wasn't going to happen, and Tyson Fury was, you know, arranging another fight in the UK. Obviously, this statement that he's sort of done, a few things he said, blaming different things, saying his water was spiked, there was something in Tyson's glove. What do you make of all that?
Crazy. I think it's just the whole thing from beginning till this point is absolutely insane. I think that the excuses he's come out with are ridiculous. Talking about gloves being tampered with. Listen, I know as an ex-fighter, I know what goes on. You've got your inspectors there. They tape up the gloves. They sign the gloves. They don't leave until you do your ring walk. No gloves. We're not living in the 40s now. We're living, you know, the modern day. No gloves are being tampered with. There's no water being spiked. There's no dressing gown that was too heavy and took all his legs away. I mean, there's just so many things that I've heard. And Mark Greenham, by the way, his trainer, saved his career. He saved that kid's career, because had Mark Greenham never pulled him out when he did, I think Deontay Wilder was, obviously he's got that fighter's mentality where he is too brave maybe for his own good sometimes. He was in serious trouble and he was systematically getting beaten up. And when you see that, you go, right, the ref's not jumping in it, and someone's got to do something. And that's Mark Breland's job. Mark Breland's was a pound-for-pound star in his day. He knows, you know, you can tell when your fighter's in trouble. And you're a fighter, whenever you sit down, if a fighter sits down in the corner and he's come back from a really bad round, you say to him, you're right, how you feeling? The fighter automatically will go, yeah, I'm fine. But that's your decision to decide whether they are or whether they're not. You've got that role, that role of conduct to make that decision. Mark Breland done that, and I think he got it spot on because he was getting badly beaten up. He was bleeding badly from the ear, so you know there was worry that there was internal damage. I think he was spot on, and how he can then turn around and say, "Oh, Mark Breland," was he saying that Mark spiked his drink or someone spiked? I mean, it's just the whole thing is insane. I'm not sure, Ali, we'll ever see him box again, and that's the truth of it. I just think I'm not sure we'll see him in the ring again. I think the guy is. I don't know what sort of mental state he's in at the moment, but I saw the video he put out and the way that he was talking, and listen, it was great, and he had the piano music playing in the background, and I thought it was like, do you know what I mean? It was like theatre stuff, really, if I'm totally honest, but some of the stuff that he's been suggesting is just insane, and where does he go from here? Because I think now Tyson Fury's moved on. He's realised that, listen, actually, this is not going to happen. And I don't know where Deontay Wilder goes from here, if I'm totally honest. I don't know how he rebuilds because he's doing a lot of damage. He's trying to damage the sport, and he's doing a lot of damage to himself at the same time as well. And he's sort of like that guy that if you don't have to fight him, why would you? Because he's a dangerous guy, you know. But why he's damaging his own reputation, I don't think he's doing himself any favours because he might become the chairman of the Who Need Him or Who Wants Him club, you know. And that's my personal opinion on Deontay Wilder. I don't think he's done himself any favours since that defeat. I think he should have just wiped his mouth and said, you know what, I was beat by the better man. Let's get on with it. Let's do the trilogy. The first one was close. The second one you won clearly. He had the punch power to turn it around with one shot. So he should have gone back through that one. All that tells me is that he didn't fancy it.
You know what, Spencer's going off that. Deontay Wilder has that sort of mentality where he says, I'll die in the ring. He said it many a times before. I'll murder my opponent or I'll die in the ring, whatever it is. Yeah. You stop boxing because you had a life-threatening injury. When you hear stuff like this, does it really does it piss you off? Like you get fighters who are saying these things, but you've gone through it. You've gone through the ordeal after the turmoil, the stress after that you've had to deal with. When people say this, does it really irk you a little bit?
It doesn't hurt me because I understand it. I recognise it. I would say it when I was boxing. It's like, oh, if you got, you know, if I'm going to lose this fight, you'll have to kill me in there. You'll have to nail me to the floor. You'll have to take me out. I get it. You know, boxers talk like that, and it's like all they're trying to express is that they will go through whatever they need to go to get out there. Not quitters, basically. That's what they're trying to say. So listen, I understand it. I understand the the phrases that boxers use. I used it myself when I was boxing, but I also understand the dangers of the sport, and that's because I've been there, and I've been there to the. You know, there's no one better to be able to talk about it than me. You know, I was a kid that was defending my European title, #2 in the world by all the governing bodies, the world at my feet, and then 12 days later waking up in a hospital bed with like 98 staples in my head. You know, and going, what happened there? You know, it's just like it was. So I understand the dangers of sport, but I understand the way that the fighters speak. So does it piss me off? No, definitely not, because it's just the way that fighters talk. Yeah.
Cool. Right. Well, we're going to look at some of the fights that have been recently. Last weekend, Devin Haney returned to the ring. He had a win. I just want to talk in general about that performance, but also the lightweight division in general. Obviously, there's been some unbelievable performances. Gervonta Davis the week before. And then you had Lopez Lomachenko, so the sort of upset there. Just talk to me about those performances and that sort of exciting division.
I think that Devin Haney was boxing Gamboa, who's, listen, in his day he was decent, really good. But past his best, well past his best. And Devin Haney, really, if he was going to make a statement, he needed to really try and get Gamboa out of there. But Gamboa is a great fighter, a great experience. So, look, he done what he had to do, and he won virtually every round. And he cemented his place up there, you know, with the best in the division. But, wow, man, this is a tough division at the moment. A really tough division. Probably the toughest division in the world right now. You know, Teofimo Lopez doing what he done to Lomachenko. But then Lomachenko coming out afterwards and going, well, I had shoulder injury. I went in there. Don't go in the fight if you don't make them excuses up after the fight. That really pisses me off, if I'm totally honest. When a fighter says, oh, but I was injured. Well, you lost, and that's it. Let's move on. I think Teofimo Lopez done a brilliant job. Lomachenko spent too much time dancing around, making him miss, but not doing enough work. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't win the return. I think it's a great fight if that return ever happens. But you've got some great fighters in the mix at the moment in that lightweight division. It's sort of one of the best divisions out there. Gervonta Davis as well. You know, I mean, that uppercut that he won his fight with was incredible. One of the best shots you'll see, if not the best shot this year. I mean, and that was a tough fight for him as well. You know, Leo Santa Cruz is a good fighter, 4-weight world champion, and there was nothing in it. It was a great fight. But that uppercut, man, wow. That was like, just when you thought you wouldn't see a better uppercut than Povetkin versus Dillian White, you get one. Do you know what I mean? Crazy.
You know what? I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you, who do you think is the best fight in that division?
Oh, it's a tough one. That is a tough one. It's not even really putting me on the spot. I just think that Teofimo Lopez has just burst on the scene. If you'd have asked me before the Lomachenko fight, his name wouldn't have come into it.
Okay.
Devin Haney looks incredible as well. We've even got Luke Campbell. Luke Campbell's right up in the mix, by the way. He's right there. And I think that fight's going to tell us a lot about both guys as well, Ryan Garcia and Luke Campbell. Because I think the winner of that is right up there in the mix as well. I mean, how good's Ryan Garcia? We don't know. I mean, he's unbelievable on Instagram, and he's the Instagram king. Yeah. But can he really do it? Can he really mix him at that level? This is what we're going to find out. So if he goes and does an amazing job on Campbell, that puts him right up there as well. He's the real deal. These are all young kids as well. And I think with Campbell, if he does an amazing job on Garcia, then it puts him right back in the mix. You know, it's really difficult to say who's the best out there at that division at the moment, because I think that they all need to get it on, and we'll sort of like in the next 12 months or so, we'll find out a little bit more about who's the best in the division. But wow, man, that's a tough division.
You know what? Actually, looking at the past history in the last 10 years, when you look at big fights, champions fighting champions, it takes ages for them fights to get made most of the time. We looked at Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. That probably was about 5-6 years too late. Even AJ Fury, that might take a bit more time than we think. It might not be 2021. We don't know. But in this day and age where, people want quality fights, we see what the UFC was doing in the lockdown. They put up great quality fights. The champions have to fight the champions, right? Don't they? It's time for just people to forget egos, forget the business side of things, and the champions fight the champions.
Well, I think the pandemic's done that. Yeah. I think that's what we're going to get out of this. Although we're going to get less shows and it's going to affect the boxers, the younger boxers coming through, and we're going to lose a lot of talent and stuff like that. I think that on the plus side, for the fans, the people watching at home, behind the closed doors shows or whatever, I think we're going to get those fights happening sooner rather than later for that reason, because it's got to make financial sense. And if you're going to do a box office show, it's got to whet the appetite of everybody watching. When you're all in lockdown, you're going to want to pay 20 quid or 25 quid or whatever it is. You want a good fight. So I think that AJ versus Fury, I think will happen if AJ comes through Pulev. On December the 12th, and Fury comes through his fight against Carviel on December the 5th. I think they fight next, and I think they do it without the WBO belt, because I don't think that who is it? Alexander Usyk. I don't think he will step aside. I think he wants that mandatory fight. I don't think that AJ will go through with that. I don't think he needs to, because I think that we need to see the Fury fight. So I think that they might fight without the WBO belt, and Alexander Usyk will then pick that belt up, and then they might unify after that. Who knows? But I definitely think we'll see Fury versus Joshua after they both boxed in December. I think that will be that fight will happen.
How do you see that fight going? What's your prediction on that?
I'm going to tell you.
That is putting you on the spot.
No, it's not putting me on the spot. I'm going to tell you a funny story. So I work on TalkSport every Thursday. We do Jim White and Simon Jordan's show, and we have that boxing hour. I was in the studio with Johnny Nelson. This is when we were going into the studio. I was in the studio with Johnny Nelson, and we're sitting there, and we're about 5 minutes before we go on air, and then our producer, Ed Huntley, runs in and goes, brilliant news. We've got Tyson Fury on the line. So we're going to speak to Tyson Fury about, upcoming fights and all that. So I was like, all right, great. But I know that Johnny's had a little online bit of banter because he favoured Anthony Joshua, as I do, right? And he favoured. So I laughed in the studio. I looked at Johnny and I was like, oh shit, man, he's going to go into you. This is going to be hilarious. And then Jim White says, right, Spencer, welcome to the show, Spencer Oliver and Johnny Nelson. By the way, Spencer, you think Tyson Fury's going to lose this fight, don't you? Tyson's on the line. Tyson, how you doing? And I was like, oh my God. And Tyson was like, well, let's get into it. Why do you think I'm going to lose? I was like, well, listen, I think Anthony Joshua's got better all-rounder boxing ability. I think that, just stylistically, he wins the fight. I don't know why, I don't know how. It's my gut feeling. And it's not personal, it's an opinion. And he was like, he just went off on one. He was like, how's he? I'll go through him like butter. Technically, I'm better than him. Da, 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 da. And I just said, listen, like I said, it's not personal. It's an opinion. And it's not because AJ's my mate and I've known him forever or whatever. I just truly believe, stylistically, AJ may win. And yeah, and so that's it, really. I just think that AJ, I don't know what makes me think that, but I just think he'll have the edge. I just think that AJ's style, he throws punches. And people underestimate AJ's boxing ability, by the way. They think he's like a slightly better Frank Bruno or whatever. He's not. He's got good boxing brain. He's got good foot movement, in and out. He throws shots straight through the middle, which I think will be the problem for Fury. Fury likes to angle his arms and come out wide and stuff. So, yeah, I lean towards AJ. And look, if I wake up in the morning after the fight and I open the papers and it said that Fury won, would I be surprised? Of course I wouldn't. Because it's one of those fights, like, Ali, I could ask you, and we've all got an opinion, but we could all be so wrong. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like one of those fights that I don't really know who wins. I just think it's the best fight out there. And if I've got to pick a winner, I'm leaning towards Joshua.
Fair enough. Do you want to talk
what
about
you?
Me?
What about you, just quickly?
Ali,
I think Fury. I lean towards Fury, only based on his recent performance, the last performance against Wilder, to be honest.
That's fair enough.
I'm the same. See, to be honest.
See, that's what I'm saying. So people go on. So let me break this down for you as well. So a lot of people have said that on recent form. And I said, well, if you look at what AJ done after getting knocked out by Ruiz, I said to go into the immediate rematch after, because he didn't just get knocked out, he got beaten up from round 3 onwards. He got put down, 3 or 4 times, and he got beaten up through the fight. Now to go back into that, psychologically, mentally, that's a tough job. I know that as an ex-fighter. And he went in there and he overcome all those demons and he stuck to a game plan and proved actually he can box on the back foot. He doesn't just have to have a fight, AJ. So he showed me that he's got more in his locker than I even thought. And I've known AJ since he was an amateur, since he started. My dad trained him, my uncle trained him. Yeah. So I've known him a long time. So it just showed me that he's got that adaptability. And that's why I think that he wins a fight, because I just think that he may turn up and do something that Fury's not expecting him to do. Because I said to Tyson Fury on this situation as well, I said, how do you beat AJ then? I said, would you go and meet him in the centre of the ring? He said, I'll knock him out in 2 rounds. So I said, what, so you're going to go and meet AJ in the centre of the ring from round 1? He said, yeah. And I went, that's why I think AJ wins. Because I think tactically, who gets it right and who gets it wrong. That's how that fight's won. I think that it's just all about tactics and who gets it right and who gets it wrong. And I just think that AJ will get it right.
Just going off what you're saying then, I like AJ. I think he's a great fighter. I think if Fury wasn't about, he'd clean the division up. But only reason why I think Fury wins is, you talked about adaptability there. Fury, before the second Wilder fight, was like, I'm going to knock him out. There was no one that I spoke to, and I interviewed a lot of people before that saying Fury would knock him out. People would say Wilder would knock him out and Fury would win by points. But the way Fury fought on that night, you've got to say that people thought he was a madman, thinking that he could knock out, he would go toe to toe with Wilder. But he did it. He pushed him back, and he sort of just.
He beat the brawler at his own game, and that's why you go, wow, massive respect. But then you go back to, who was it, Otto Wallin? Yeah. I mean, he picked up the bad cut, but what I'm saying is, he picked up the bad cut early, but that performance was terrible. And on the back of that performance, you go, AJ wins that fight if they box. So you can only take it by everyone's last fight. Do you know what I'm saying? But I'm sort of like I'm just sort of looking at everything, and that's why I just lean towards AJ. I just think Fury's been known to have, when he has a bad night, he has a terrible night, he has a stinker. And when he has a good one, he has an unbelievable one. So does Joshua. You know, Joshua proved that he can get off the floor and he can come back like he did against Vladimir Klitschko. Wow, mate, come on. Okay. What he showed there, he showed balls, man. And like, I was at ringside for that. And I was like, wow. When he went over the first time, I was like, he's in serious trouble. And he recovered and he come back and he won the fight. So what I'm saying is AJ's got all that experience of being defeated, being on the brink of defeat and then turning it back round. You know, and I think that will all stand him in good stead, because whoever wins that fight, the winner is going to know he's been in a fight. And he may have had to climb off the floor to do it or whatever. That's not a one-horse race, but neither man. And I think there's a case to be made for both of them, but just lean towards AJ.
Just going off that Klitschko fight, that's probably the best fight I watched live. I think it was just back and forth. It was amazing.
It's insane.
The atmosphere was crazy. That Wembley Stadium, the atmosphere was the best atmosphere I've witnessed for a boxing fight. It was mad.
Sure. Yeah, it was insane. It was just like the whole experience of, you know, Wembley Stadium and the drama of the fight. That's what done it for me. AJ was going and all of a sudden, boom, he gets put down and you think, beep, he's in trouble here. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what I'm saying is that I thought he's not going to recover. And that's what I'm saying. AJ ticks a lot of boxes for me because he does recover. He does get hurt, but he does recover. And he does come back. He done it against Dillian Whyte as well. I mean, he was gone in that second round against Dillian Whyte. And he pulls it out of the bag. It's going to be interesting, man. I'm excited for it. So how do you think he wins, Ali?
I just think that maybe not so much now, but obviously AJ underestimated Ruiz quite a lot. And I do think that similar to what you're saying, that, you know, AJ can change his style and whatever, but I don't think that people think Tyson Fury can. But I actually think he can more. He sort of showed it in the second Wilder fight, but I think he can probably do more than he's even shown still. So I think that maybe AJ just won't be ready for that, because I just don't think that people think Tyson Fury can do everything, really. And I just think he will. I think he'll surprise him. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. What about you?
You know what? Just from what you said, I think it's so close. The only reason why I picked Fury is because it's very close. I'm slightly edging towards Fury. I think if AJ boxes, and he's great at combinations, AJ is, if he can land some of the straight combinations that he does do, I think he'll give Fury problems. The only thing with Fury is he's a great mover in the ring. And you don't know now you don't know what sort of Fury you can get. You can get that Fury that's an aggressor, or you can get the one that moves about, maybe tires AJ out. We don't know. We've seen AJ tire out as well in fights. So I'm sure for that fight, he'll be doing a lot more cardio. He'll be preparing for a longer 12-round fight where he has to move. He might have to move to catch Fury, or Fury's going to be everywhere. So it's going to be a tough one. I just feel like slightly Fury has the edge there for me.
So that's what makes this fight so exciting. That's why we all want to see it, because none of us really know. We all discuss it and we all talk about it, but none of us know. And I think that it is genuinely one of those fights where I think more people favour Fury over Joshua to win the fight. I think you'd probably look at 70-30 split on people that think Fury wins and Joshua wins, in my personal opinion. From what I listen to and people talking about it, I think it's heavily favoured in Fury's favour, but it's going to be interesting, I think that's the fight that the world needs to see. I think that's the fight that's happening in world boxing. I know there's other fights. See that by springtime.
Yeah.
I personally think we could see that by April, May time.
Okay.
So I think they both come through, and I think they'll get it on, because they won't want to miss this. They won't want to jeopardise it any more than they have to. Pulev's a dangerous opponent, but I believe Joshua wins. And Caballero, who beat Derek Chisora for the European title out in Monte Carlo in that terrible fight when Chisora turned up with shorts that would fit me, and he looked totally unmotivated, and it was just a bad performance. But he proved that he's decent as well, and I think they're good warm-up fights for both of those guys. And I think the Fury, I think we'll get it on in April, May, I reckon.
I know.
Fingers crossed, I think.
So good.
Spence, before we let you go, I just want to quickly talk about another British fighter that's going over to America to fight probably one of the pound-for-pound fighters of the world in Terrance Crawford. Kell Brook, what do you make of this? Because we know that it's a tough fight, regardless of the situation, it's a tough fight, but this time he's not got the backing of people that he's normally around with, like the Eddie Hearns, the Dominic Ingles, this sort of setup that he's been with for the last however many years, 8, 10 years or whatever, however long it's been. What do you make of him flying out to America with a new team, with a new setup on a new channel? What do you make of all of this?
Well, I'm not sure really. It's a difficult one. I spoke to Kell about this as well, and he just said it's something that he felt like he wanted to do on his own. He's at that stage of his career, and he wanted to only box the best. He's got that opportunity against, like you say, a pound-for-pound star. It's a tough ask for Kell, and he's decided to do it on his own. Perhaps that's telling you that he wanted as much out of the pot as he could get, you know, financially, because does he recognise that this could be, or he does recognise that this could be possibly his last fight if he loses? I mean, it's massively stacked against him. It's a really tough ask, especially back down at 147 as well. How much will that take out of Kell? You know, going into the second stretch, into the last 6, you know, how much stamina will that take out of him? Because we knew how difficult it was 10 years ago for Kell to make 147. So what changes now? He's talking about, you know, he's got the weight right now and the diet's all right. He's got the right team around him. He had a good team around him before. You know, the Ingles are a great team. And I think they've done amazing stuff. You know, Dom Ingle and that have done amazing stuff with Kell Brook. So I just think it's a really tough ask. And I think that maybe if he's doing it on his own and he's doing it his own way, is because perhaps he wants to get financially as much as he can out of it, because it could be his last fight.
Well,
I mean, I hope he wins the fight, by the way, because I love Kell, but so I'm putting it out there. I really love him, but that's my heart speaking. Yeah. But my head tells me that's too much of a tough job.
I think that's the situation with a lot of fans as well, to be honest. They want Kell to win, the UK fans, I mean, and it's very hard to see him actually pulling it off. But you know what? Good luck to him, because he is going into the Lions Den. He's fighting against one of the best fighters in the world. And we'll truly see what sort of Kell Brook we've got at this present time, to be honest, as well.
Listen, he steps up, Kell. Yeah. He steps up, man. He always steps up to the plate. He done it against Errol Spence Jr., pound-for-pound star again. He done it, moved up to middleweight against Gennady Golovkin. What I'm saying is the guy's got balls, and he puts it on the line, and he's doing it again here. So you can only salute him for that. You know, I think that he's a great ambassador for British boxing. He really is, because he's not one of these guys that makes excuses, looks for different routes, everything else. He puts it on the line, man. And I love that about fighters that box with their heart on their sleeve. You know, you've got to respect that.
How annoyed are you that this Amir Khan-Kell Brook fight didn't happen? It's never going to happen now.
I'm pissed off, man. So pissed off. And you know what? I've seen Amir just recently saying, I hope Kell wins so we can make this fight. Come on, man. Like, I'll tell you why that fight didn't happen. Shall I tell you why that fight didn't happen? This is my personal opinion. Because it's all about legacy. And losing to another British fighter, you're always remembered for that. Yeah. And you don't mind losing to other fighters. And I think Kell's wanted to put it on the line, and Kell's wanted to do it for a long time. And Amir Khan's been going, no, I want to box, you know, I want to box Canelo, who's, you know, not even in my weight division, and I want to box him, and I want the big names. But really, I think it all comes down to ego. And losing to another British fighter, you'll always be remembered that, especially in the Amir Khan-Kell Brook situation. And I think that's why the fight's not happened. And I don't think that's down to Kell. I think Kell's always wanted that fight to happen. I just don't think that Amir is really keen on risking that legacy that he's built up. You know, he's done a great job, man. He's a two-weight world champion. He's incredible. He's gone abroad. He's beat and boxed everyone. You know, and I think that's my personal opinion. That's why the fight never happened. And I hope we don't sort of see it now, because if he loses to Crawford and then Amir says, let's do it, it's sort of like, really? Do you know what I mean?
I think the public demand for it's gone as well, to be honest.
The time's passed. Maybe. It's been and gone for that. The prime of both of them.
We was waiting like 7-8 years for that fight now.
And you know what? That would have been a great fight. That would have been a great fight, because
who would have won?
You know what? Even to this day, even to this day, I can't pick a winner, because at their prime, when they were both at their peak, they're both fantastic fighters, different fighters. But even then, like I thought Brook had the power. He could potentially knock Amir Khan out, but Amir Khan had the speed. So it was difficult for me. But go on,
I think Kell Brook would have won, just because of as you said, he steps up to an occasion, and I think he would have handled it better.
I'm with you. I think Kell Brook would have won the fight. I think that Amir Khan, that speed, that move. What Amir Khan does is that Amir Khan gets himself into trouble by thinking that when he gets tagged, he decides he wants to have a fight and he doesn't stick to the game plan. And he says that, and that's his undoing, Amir Khan. I think we've seen that in previous fights. When he's been beat, he gets that, he's got massive balls and he loves to have a fight. And that's his undoing, because Khan's pluses are his speed, his movement, his boxing ability, but he does get drawn into a fight. And that's where Kell Brook would want him, and Kell can whack as well. So I'm with you. I think that Kell would have won that.
You know what? One thing we've got to do for both fighters is give them credit for what they've done for British boxing, because both fighters have gone to go. Amir Khan, a world champion, Kell Brook, a world champion. They both just elevated British boxing for us in the last couple of years as well. Because the only reason I say that is a lot of fans like to criticize fighters because of the access to social media, but when you look at it as a boxing person, you know that you've got to give these guys credit. They've been in the ring, they fought the best, and they've been world champions as well.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Listen, just before we go as well, I want to talk about this. I just want to get this in there. So I've been doing, I don't know if you two are even doing it. If you're not, I'm a little bit disappointed, but I've been doing an online, we've done an online 12-round boxing program, myself and Johnny, which is like a fitness program. It's for all levels, all ages, all sizes, male, female. Do it at home on your own, do it with a family member. But it's a 12-round challenge, that me and Johnny done online, and it's getonit.johnnynelson.co.uk. Okay. So I just wanted to put it out there because, listen, in the world that we're living in at the moment, there's a lot of depression about, there's a lot of people struggling, and this is really good for your mental state of mind, and that it just takes you away from the pressures of life, and it's a little bit of fun that we put together, and it's good. If you can do the 12 rounds, by the way, as well, you're in pretty good nick.
I'll give it
so it's perfect for lockdown as well. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Spencer, it's been a pleasure having you on, picking your brain on boxing. So thank you very much for coming up and talking.
You know what? I've loved it, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been brilliant. It's been good fun.
Thank you. Spencer, and we'll catch up with you soon.
We'll catch up with you soon, mate.
100%. Take care, guys.
Take care.
You too.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Great to be joined there by Spencer Oliver, talking all things boxing, some predictions, and looking ahead to the fights in 2021. Make sure you stay tuned. We have lots more coming up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, help us out, leave some comments, share, do whatever you can, and we will catch you next time.